morning I'm going to be starting on a new project, I should say 2 new projects. We're making a set of end tables out of cherry. Last weekend I spent some time doing some lumber selection. We milled them down. I got one side flat on the joiner, flipped it over, ran it through my planer, got them down again so they were flat, and stickered them for about a week. I let them sit in the shop, and they actually retained the flatness, so I'm pretty happy about that. These are the blanks that I'll be cutting the legs out of. They're about 1 7/8 inches strong. I was hoping for 2 inches. I didn't get that, but I can work around that. About 9 inches wide. So my first step in this process is going to be cutting these down and getting them perfectly square. I'm going to start by sawing these down about 2 inches wide on my bandsaw. What I also want to do is number these boards as I cut them to make sure that I use the same 4 legs from the same piece of wood on each table. Marked all my boards or my leg stock with a known good face or a flat face. And I'm going to put that up against the fence of my joiner, run them through so I can get a nice perpendicular edge on here before I run them through the thickness planer. Start running them through the thickness planer. I've marked both the 2 sides that I know are parallel to one another, and I know the ones that I just jointed is the rift sawn. So I want to put that side down, start running them through, and I want to get that to the same thickness as this is. I've got 8 leg blanks. They're all perfectly square, 1 7/8. Now I just need to pick out the grain patterns. So I've got the best grain facing forward from each board. I want to use the rift sawn for the show faces on all 4 legs. And once I determine which is the show face, I'll mark this out on the top so I can remember it. And then I need to mark out for where my mortises go. After I spent some time determining which is the best face forward on all 4 legs, on all 4 sides. I'm also dealing with some sapwood that I'm going to hide in some corners and such. But I've marked them all out, as you can see. I've marked out which sides are going to have the mortises. I marked out 1 and 2 so I don't get this confused. With this many pieces and 2 separate tables, this is very easy to screw up. And you know, we all make mistakes, but I'd rather not have to deal with them when they do happen. After I've marked out all the mortises, I've put the pieces back together using the triangle, make sure I've got 1 with 1 and 1 with 1. I want to do a last final check, open these up and make sure that the mortises are all in the right place. And they do appear to be, so I'll go ahead and start chopping those out. I've got my hollow chisel mortises set up. And I've squared the chisel to the fence. I've set the depth. I've put my lock bar down, and I verified that the distance between this and the fence is 5/16 of an inch using setup bars, and I think I'm ready to go. There's a lot of mortises to cut, but we'll get through it. So I've got some nice sharp corners here, some very nice smooth walls. The secret to using one of these is to make sure that you have a nice sharp chisel and bit. There are kits available to sharpen these. This set is about 15 years old, maybe 20 years old, and it came with the hollow chisel mortiser, and it's given me a lot of use. So just keep those sharp and it'll cut right through this. After I've chopped out the bulk of the material with the hollow chisel mortiser, I'm just going to go back with some chisels and clean up the bottoms and the sides a little bit. Well, I'm doing something a little bit different with the legs that I've never tried before. I've seen it on a few pieces of furniture and I liked it. My wife really liked it. The legs are going to be 26 inches tall. There's going to be a 6-inch apron here. There's going to be an initial taper here, and this is tapered on all 4 sides. And then there's going to be an additional taper down here. So it's going to go down to 1.5 inches, and then finally down to 1/8 or 7/8 of an inch here on the bottom. And each one of those tapers is going to be divided by a small inlay, and I'm actually going to make those out of walnut. And I need to, now that I've got all the mortises chopped out, I need to first make these kerfs in the leg here. Then I also need to make these flutes on the top for the front legs. I've got my cross-cut slut here. I've got a positive stop. I've got the blade set at 1/8 of an inch tall. I've got my mark out here, so I'm just going to run these through and just do all 4 sides that way. I've done the initial kerf cut here on the top. Now I've got to make this kerf here at the bottom. Because this is going to be a taper down this way, I need to set the blade height to cut a deeper kerf right here. Marking out the actual dimensions on the leg itself and where the kerf is going to be, taking that down extra 1/8 inch. I've determined the depth of that cut needs to be 5/16 of an inch. So I've set up my sliding table with the stop, and I'll just cut these. Well, I've got the kerfs cut for the decorative beading, as you can see. The last thing I need to do while the legs are still square and before I taper them is to cut the 3 decorative flutes in the actually 4 front legs, because there's 2 side tables. I'm getting ready to start cutting the flutes now. I've got my face marked. I've got my start and stop points. I've got a 1/4 inch bit set up in my router. I've also marked, well, not marked, but moved the fences over where the bit starts and stops and set up the fence. I've also marked out the center line and then centered that. So this was 1 7/8. This is 15/16, and this is 15/32. So all I need to do is start this up, drop it down, move back to my line, and then push it through. And then once I've done that on all 4 faces, I can move the fence either way, the 15/32 from that center mark, and I'll be very accurate on the front. There's the last of the 3 flutes on the front. Now I just need to cut the legs to length using my sliding table. I've got my tapering jig set up to make the first taper, and I'm able to do 4-sided tapers on this. It's important to remember that I want 1.5 inches on this point down here, not down here. So I need to continue those lines that I laid out before, 1.5 inches, and continue them down. And that actually works out to about 3/16 of an inch on the end. So I'm ready to start cutting. Well, after I've got the 4 tapers cut on the legs, I also need to do the second angle down here, which requires a much more drastic angle on here. To do the 4-side one before, it requires 2 setups. You set the jig to do one side, rotate it 90 degrees into the other side, go through all, again in this case, 8 legs, and then reset the jig to that angle. So this is pretty nice. But when I do this, it's all going to be referenced off that same angle every time. So all I need to do is set this once and just rip this 4 times. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a taper here and then an additional taper down here. And again, that'll look very nice once I get the beading into these insets here. So measurements came out pretty good. I'm about 1/16 of an inch off here, but that's all right. Only I know. Well, now you do too. Got the legs tapered. I just need to clean up all the mill marks, and I'm going to do that with a card scraper. It gives me a nice flat surface and easily removes those mill marks without affecting the profile of the leg. Another thing I should mention too, as you can see, there's a lot of contrast coming through because of the light coming through the window. I like to do this kind of work in the morning. I've got a nice beam of light coming in through the window. It makes it nice so I can sight down the edge of this and I can actually see shadows if I've left any mill marks. So this is just to help me make sure I get these flat and again get all the mill marks out. Well, next thing I want to do before I put the beading in place here, I want to make sure I break all these edges with some 220 grit sandpaper. Wow, this is going to be very hard to do once those get in place. I've cut some strips that are about 1/8 inch thick. Those are going to fit into the kerfs that I made on the table legs. So first thing I want to do is I want to cut these down. Now I need to make these about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I'll just cut those here on the bandsaw. I'm getting ready to cut the beading that goes into the kerfs I cut the legs. I should mention that this design for the legs and this beading I borrowed from David Marks. I saw in one of his videos, and I'm going to do basically the same thing he did here. I've wrapped them all together with blue tape. I'm going to cut them on a sled. He used a table saw. I'm going to use a band saw. I just think it's a little bit safer. So I've taped them together. I've marked out where I'm going to cut them on this side of the fence. After I set a stop block in place here, I'm just going to take these pieces, I'm going to rest them up against here, and then push them through the opposing side here so I make sure I get a perfect 90 degree. small pieces of beading that need to go on the legs. I've got the two different sizes, one for the top and one for the smaller ones. I've got them in separate bowls so I don't get them confused. I've got all my parts laid out, glue brush, small mallet, and also some tape, and I'll show you exactly how this is going to go. So it's really a matter of just taking a little bit of glue. I'm just going to put a little bit on the end of this. Doesn't need a whole lot, they're pretty tight fit. I'm just going to put them in there one at a time and position it so it's even reveal on both sides. Just tap them into place. I want to make sure I put a little bit on the mitered end of these also. Well, this is one of the completed legs, and these came out very nice. As you can see, I've got the banding on the top and the bottom. I've also chamfered around the bottom of the leg, and I'm ready to start working on the structures now.